A group of friends sets out for an adventurous ski trip in the mountains, but when eerie shadows start to hunt them down, they realize that escaping may be the least of their worries. What dark secrets lie within the snow, waiting to claim them? The icy air of the Norwegian mountains greeted Anna, Mark, Sarah, and David as they stepped off the lift. The untouched snow stretched endlessly before them, a pristine blanket that begged to be skied. The group had heard whispers about the remote trail, its beauty, its danger, but they craved the thrill. Ignoring the distant warnings from locals about strange disappearances, they strapped on their skis, excitement buzzing between them as they prepared to carve through the wilderness. Gliding down the untouched slope, laughter echoed between the trees. Mark led the way, his tracks clear in the soft snow. But when Anna glanced up moments later, he was gone. No figure in sight, no movement ahead. They halted, scanning the area. His ski tracks stopped abruptly, vanishing into the whiteness. Panic flickered through the group as they called his name, their voices swallowed by the cold, empty silence of the mountain. A chill ran down Anna's spine as they searched for Mark, calling out into the deafening silence. The trees loomed closer, shadows stretching unnaturally in the fading light. With each passing moment, the realization set in. They were utterly alone. David checked his phone, but there was no signal. The weight of isolation pressed down on them. As they retraced their steps, the air thickened with unease, and the laughter that once filled the air felt like a distant memory. The sun dipped lower, casting eerie shadows across the snow. Panic began to settle in as Anna, Sarah, and David huddled together, debating whether to continue searching or return to the lodge. Suddenly, a distant sound, a faint rustle in the trees, made them freeze. They exchanged worried glances, their breaths visible in the frigid air. With trembling hands, Anna tightened her grip on her ski poles, bracing herself to confront whatever awaited them in the darkening woods. Heart-pounding, the trio ventured cautiously toward the source of the sound. Every crunch of snow felt magnified in the thickening silence. As they approached a clearing, an unnatural stillness enveloped them. David suddenly gasped, pointing to a set of ski tracks that inexplicably appeared, leading deeper into the woods. They followed, a mix of hope and dread coursing through them. With each step, the fading light seemed to draw them closer to a point of no return. The tracks twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the forest, where the trees closed in like spectators to a grim play. Anna's heart raced as the surrounding silence became suffocating, each breath echoing in her ears. Suddenly, they stumbled upon an empty clearing, eerily void of snow, as if the ground itself had absorbed it. The realization hit them. They were not just lost. They had crossed into a space where time and reality felt distorted. Rachel adjusted her goggles as she began her solitary descent down the pristine slope of the Canadian resort. The sun gleamed off the snow, creating a dazzling spectacle. Yet, something felt off. The usual chatter of fellow skiers was absent, replaced by an unsettling silence. She brushed it off, focusing on the thrill of gliding down the mountainside. But as she ventured further from the main trail, the quiet deepened, hinting at something unnerving lurking just beyond her vision. As Rachel continued her descent, the silence grew heavier, pressing against her like a thick fog. She stopped to catch her breath and glanced back at the trail she'd carved in the snow. To her horror, the tracks were vanishing, erasing themselves as if the mountain were swallowing them whole. Panic surged within her, but she shook it off, convincing herself it was just her imagination. Still, an uneasy feeling settled in her gut, urging her to turn back. Rachel pressed on, her heart racing with each glide. The unnerving silence clawed at her nerves, making every sound, a snapping twig, the whisper of the wind, feel amplified. She shouted, hoping to hear an echo, but only the oppressive quiet responded. Her surroundings seemed to shift. The trees grew denser, their silhouettes casting eerie shadows in the fading light. With every turn, the fear of being utterly alone crept in, tightening around her like a vice, urging her to flee. Suddenly, Rachel felt a chill that cut deeper than the cold. It wasn't just the temperature. It was as if something unseen was watching her, stalking her from the depths of the trees. She glanced around, scanning the darkening forest, but saw nothing. Her breaths quickened as she fought the urge to scream. The silence became deafening, and every instinct told her to run, yet she stood frozen, gripped by an unshakable sense of being hunted in the quiet. As Rachel skied, she glanced back, her pulse quickening. The familiar marks of her skis had begun to fade, barely noticeable in the thickening snow. Panic surged through her as she turned to find the way back, only to realize the path had shifted. It was as if the mountain itself conspired against her, erasing her presence. Desperation clawed at her throat. She had to keep moving, but each stroke felt more futile against the cold grasp of isolation. Rachel's breaths came in sharp gasps as she pushed forward, her heart pounding like a war drum. Suddenly, a distant sound pierced the oppressive silence, a faint echo of laughter, or perhaps a cry. She hesitated, caught between hope and dread. Was someone else out there? Summoning her courage, she called out, her voice swallowed by the cold air. In response, the silence thickened, wrapping around her like a shroud, as she realized she might be truly alone. Mike and his brother, Jake, stood at the edge of the forbidden slope, its allure irresistible. Known for its treacherous paths and whispered tales of vanished skiers, it was a challenge they couldn't ignore. The air was crisp, and the thrill of adventure coursed through their veins as they adjusted their gear. As they prepared to descend, an uneasy feeling settled over Mike. Ignoring the warning signs, they pushed off, oblivious to the danger lurking just ahead. The descent began smoothly, but as Mike and Jake navigated the slope, the atmosphere shifted. The snow beneath their skis felt denser, almost alive. Suddenly, trees began to warp and twist, their branches bending in unnatural angles. Jake laughed nervously, but Mike's unease deepened. Every turn seemed to alter their surroundings, and familiar landmarks disappeared. It was as if the mountain itself was shifting, a surreal ballet that kept them trapped in an eerie landscape of confusion. As they pressed on, a thick fog enveloped them, obscuring everything beyond a few feet. Mike's heart raced. The world had become a white prison. "We should head back," he suggested, but Jake shrugged it off, still eager to explore. They veered off their intended path, the sound of their skis swallowed by the heavy silence. With each turn, the snow appeared untouched, as if no one had skied there before, deepening Mike's feeling of dread. Mike suddenly felt a presence behind them, an unseen weight in the air. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, glancing nervously at Jake, who was still oblivious, laughing at a joke. The stillness intensified, and Mike's instincts screamed at him to flee. As they turned a corner, Mike spotted dark shapes shifting in the fog, but every time he looked again, they vanished. A cold shiver ran down his spine, and he knew they weren't alone. Panic surged through Mike as he grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to go, now!" Jake, still laughing, hesitated, but Mike pulled him forward. The forest felt alive with whispers, branches scraping like nails against wood. As they sped down the slope, the sense of being followed intensified. Mike dared a glance back and saw a shadow darting between the trees. Heart racing, he urged Jake to push harder, praying they could escape the unseen pursuer. With every twist and turn, the slope grew steeper, and Mike's legs burned from exertion. The snow beneath them felt unsteady, as if it could give way at any moment. Suddenly, Jake stumbled, his foot catching on a hidden root. "Go on without me," he shouted, but Mike refused to leave him. They heard a chilling growl behind them. Together, they pushed forward, hearts pounding, desperate to reach the safety of the lodge before darkness swallowed them whole. As the group of friends skied down the pristine slopes of the Rockies, a sudden storm rolled in, transforming the sunny day into a whiteout. Snowflakes whipped through the air, obscuring their vision. "We should find shelter," Emma shouted over the howling wind. Panic set in as visibility dropped to near zero. The once familiar trail disappeared beneath a thick blanket of snow, and the friends realized they had to act quickly or risk getting lost in the storm. After struggling through the storm, the group stumbled upon an abandoned ski cabin, its weathered walls shrouded in snow. Inside, they huddled together, sharing warmth as the wind howled outside. As night fell, strange noises echoed outside. "Did you hear that?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling. They all froze, straining to listen. Faint footsteps crunched in the snow, circling the cabin. A shiver ran down Emma's spine. They were not alone, and the tension in the air grew thick. The next morning, the storm had calmed, but a chilling silence enveloped the cabin. As the group prepared to leave, they noticed Jake was missing. Panic set in as they called his name, their voices echoing in the stillness. "He must have gone outside," Emma suggested, her heart racing. The others exchanged worried glances. With trepidation, they stepped into the cold, searching the area for any sign of their friend. The snow bore no trace of Jake. He had vanished. With worry gnawing at them, the group ventured deeper into the forest, where the trees stood like silent sentinels. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a weathered sign. "Forbidden Zone, no entry." Ignoring the warning, Emma insisted they search there, convinced Jake had wandered off. The air grew heavier as they crossed the threshold, an unsettling feeling settling in. Each step felt like a challenge, the trees whispering secrets, and the sense of dread deepened with every moment spent in the eerie silence. As they moved further into the Forbidden Zone, an unsettling chill enveloped the air. Shadows danced between the trees, and the group felt a strange, watchful presence. Emma shivered, glancing back nervously, sensing something lurking just out of sight. Then a distant whisper echoed through the forest, sending a wave of fear through them. "Is someone there?" she called out, her voice trembling. The silence that followed felt heavy, almost mocking, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Panic surged through the group as they realized they were lost. The trees loomed closer, their gnarled branches seeming to reach for them. "We have to get out of here," Jake shouted, but the forest felt alive, twisting their sense of direction. Emma's heart raced. The whispers grew louder, echoing their fears. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, eyes glinting in the dim light. "You shouldn't have come here," it warned, leaving them paralyzed with terror and uncertainty. The snow-capped mountains beckoned to Jake and Emma, promising excitement and escape from their mundane lives. "Let's explore the old cabin," Emma suggested, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Jake grinned, always eager for a new adventure. They packed their gear, anticipation buzzing in the air. As they drove toward the mountains, the landscape transformed into a winter wonderland, white and untouched. Little did they know that beneath the beauty lay secrets waiting to awaken in the shadows. Arriving at the cabin, Jake and Emma felt an unsettling chill in the air. The once vibrant atmosphere had shifted, with the wind whispering secrets through the trees. As they unloaded their gear, Emma noticed strange markings in the snow, resembling footprints leading deeper into the woods. "Look at this, Jake," she said, curiosity piqued. He examined them, dismissing her concerns. "It's probably just wildlife." Yet, a nagging feeling of unease crept into the back of his mind. As night fell, the cabin creaked under the weight of the silence. Jake and Emma lit a fire, trying to shake off the eerie feeling. Suddenly, a loud thump echoed outside, making them both jump. "Did you hear that?" Emma whispered, her eyes wide. Jake nodded, heart racing. They cautiously approached the window, peering into the darkness. The shadows between the trees seemed to shift, and for a brief moment, Jake swore he saw a figure lurking just beyond the light. The next morning, Jake awoke to find Emma missing. Panic surged through him as he called her name, his voice echoing in the empty cabin. He searched the small space, his heart pounding with dread. "Emma!" he shouted again, but only silence answered. Frantically, he stepped outside, the crisp air biting at his skin. The footprints from the previous night were gone, erased by the fresh snow, leaving no trace of her whereabouts. Jake felt a chill creep down his spine. Jake's heart raced as he ventured deeper into the forest, each step heavy with dread. The trees loomed overhead, their branches twisting like skeletal hands. The once inviting landscape felt sinister, the quiet amplifying his growing fear. He shouted Emma's name repeatedly, desperation lacing his voice. As he moved forward, shadows danced at the edge of his vision, leaving him questioning every rustle and whisper in the wind. Alone and terrified, Jake's hope began to dwindle. One by one, Sarah and David vanish, their laughter fading into the chilling silence. Panic grips Anna as she realizes she is alone in the freezing expanse. She struggles to ski back, but the shadows close in, whispering dark promises that chill her to the bone. With her strength waning and hope extinguished, Anna succumbs to the biting cold. As she collapses, the shadows envelop her, and she vanishes, another lost soul swallowed by the mountain's depths. In the face of fear and uncertainty, the choices we make can define our fate. Just like Anna and her friends, we may find ourselves in situations where our courage is tested and the unknown lurks around every corner. The story reminds us that while adventure can be thrilling, it also requires us to stay vigilant and trust our instincts. How would you have reacted in a moment of panic? Would you have stood your ground or fled into the unknown? If you want to continue this chilling journey, click the video on the screen now to explore more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. And don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling tales and thrilling adventures. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.